On a cool autumn morning in the Pacific Northwest, a man left his house the way he had done hundreds of times before. He grabbed his jacket, checked the weather, locked the front door, and headed toward the forest trail behind his neighborhood. Nothing unusual, no arguments, no rushed messages, just a quiet walk into the woods. But this time, he never came back. No body was found, no footprints leading out, no confirmed sightings, just a trail that disappeared into the trees, and a question that investigators have never been able to answer. How does someone walk into a forest and simply vanish? This is the mysterious case of Daniel Mercer, the man who stepped onto a familiar trail and was never seen again.
Daniel Mercer was 39 years old. He lived in the quiet town of Silver Ridge, Oregon, a small community surrounded by thick forests and mountain trails. The kind of place where people knew their neighbors, where hikers passed each other with a friendly nod, and where the woods felt peaceful rather than dangerous. Daniel worked as a freelance software developer. Most days he worked from home, long hours in front of a computer screen. But he had a habit that kept him balanced. Every afternoon, around 4 o'clock, he went for a walk. Not a long hike, just a slow walk through the Cedar Hollow Trail, a forest path that started less than 5 minutes from his house. Friends said it helped him clear his mind. He liked the quiet, the smell of pine, the sound of wind moving through tall trees. And he followed the same route almost every day.
On October 14th, Daniel finished his work early. At 3:48 p.m., security footage from a nearby home camera showed him walking down Maple Street. He wore a dark jacket, a gray backpack, and hiking shoes. He looked relaxed, unhurried. The footage captured him turning onto the dirt path leading into Cedar Hollow Trail. That was the last confirmed image of Daniel Mercer. At first, no one noticed anything unusual. He often stayed on the trail for an hour or two. But by evening, his phone went straight to voicemail. By midnight, his family began to worry. The next morning, police were called. What started as a simple welfare check quickly became something much more serious. Daniel's car was still parked outside his house. His wallet was on the kitchen counter. His laptop sat open on his desk. Nothing suggested he had planned to travel. Nothing suggested he intended to disappear. Yet somehow, he had.
Within hours, local authorities began searching the Cedar Hollow Trail. At first, they expected a simple explanation. Maybe Daniel had twisted his ankle. Maybe he had lost his way after wandering off the main path. But Cedar Hollow wasn't an unfamiliar wilderness. It was a well-marked trail used by hikers and dog walkers every day. Search teams followed the path Daniel normally walked. They found nothing. No dropped backpack, no torn clothing, no disturbed ground, just leaves and soil exactly as they should be. Soon, the search expanded. Volunteers from Silver Ridge joined the effort. Drones scanned the forest canopy. Tracking dogs were brought in. Helicopters flew low over the dense green landscape. For 3 days, teams combed through miles of forest. They checked ravines,
stream beds, abandoned logging roads. Still, there was no trace of Daniel. Then, investigators discovered something interesting. A fitness app on Daniel's phone had been tracking his steps. The data showed he had walked deeper into the forest than usual that afternoon. Not far, just a small deviation from his regular path. But after 4:27 p.m., the movement data suddenly stopped. Not slowed, not turned back, stopped. As if the phone had simply stopped moving altogether. But when search teams reached that location, they found nothing. No phone, no backpack, no signs anyone had been there at all. Even the ground showed no clear footprints. Investigators began reviewing Daniel's digital history. Emails, bank records, phone calls. Everything looked normal. There were no large withdrawals, no strange messages, no travel bookings. Friends described him as calm, thoughtful, and predictable. He didn't take risks. He didn't disappear without explanation. And yet, that was exactly what had happened. The forest had swallowed him whole.
As weeks passed, the investigation began exploring possible explanations. The first theory was simple: an accident. The forests around Silver Ridge were beautiful, but they could also be unpredictable. Steep slopes, hidden creeks, dense undergrowth. It was possible Daniel had slipped somewhere remote. But search teams had already checked every major hazard area. No clothing, no equipment, no remains. Nothing. The second theory involved wildlife. The Pacific Northwest is home to bears and mountain lions. But wildlife experts pointed out something important. Predator encounters leave evidence. Tracks, disturbed ground, biological traces.
None of those were found. Another possibility was that Daniel had chosen to disappear. Some investigators wondered whether he had quietly planned to leave his life behind. After all, people sometimes do. But that theory had problems. Daniel left behind everything. His savings account was untouched. His passport remained at home. There was no evidence he had prepared a second identity or escape plan. Then there was a stranger possibility: a random encounter. Perhaps Daniel had met someone else on the trail. A stranger. Someone passing through the area. But no witnesses reported seeing anyone suspicious that afternoon. The trail cameras along the main entrance showed only a handful of hikers. All of them were identified. None had interacted with Daniel. The final possibility was the one investigators disliked the most: that something had happened in a place they simply couldn't see. The forests around Silver Ridge stretch for hundreds of miles. Even with modern technology, it's impossible to search every corner. A single hidden ravine, a small cave, a remote patch of dense brush. Any one of those could hide a person indefinitely. Over time, the search slowly faded. Volunteers returned to their normal lives. Police resources moved to other cases. But Daniel Mercer's disappearance was never solved.
Today, nearly 6 years later, the Cedar Hollow Trail still looks exactly the same. Tall trees, soft dirt paths, sunlight filtering through green leaves. People still walk the trail every day. Most never think about the story connected to it. But occasionally, someone pauses at the entrance. They look into the forest and remember the man who walked in one afternoon and never came back out. No final message, no confirmed sighting, no explanation. Just a quiet path disappearing into the trees, and a mystery that remains unsolved. Because sometimes the most unsettling cases aren't the ones filled with chaos. They're the ones where everything seems normal, right up until the moment someone vanishes. So the question still lingers in Silver Ridge. What really happened to Daniel Mercer? And how can someone walk into a forest and leave absolutely no trace behind?